I recently received a message about my video called Spare the Rod. It's linked below and deals with my firm stance against hitting children as an essential component to raising them. For the sake of clarity, no, I don't conflate a quick spank or a firm tap on the wrist with the cruelty of unmitigated physical child abuse. However, the fact that unmitigated child abuse is worse doesn't make corporal punishment positive, effective, or acceptable. Getting your finger chopped off is nowhere near as bad as getting your entire arm chopped off, but that doesn't make finger severing the way to go. The message I recently got posited two popular arguments that I'd like to respond to here because this isn't the first time that I've heard them given. Number one, humans will do more to avoid pain than they do to seek pleasure. The general rule for corporal punishment is that you use it as a last resort, given the time that you have to work with. Physical punishment should only come after warning and/or explanation. If I have already told a child to do or not do a thing several times and in several different ways, then negative reinforcement is completely appropriate. Most of the time, simply letting a child know they are getting close to physical reprimand is enough to get them to behave. Your first point is flawed before it gets off the ground. It's also misusing the term negative reinforcement, but that's due to a common misconception I'll clear up later. You said humans will do more to avoid pain than they do to seek pleasure. And for starters, you're assuming that all humans are motivated in the same way, or that all young humans at least are motivated in the same way. You ask anyone who's successfully taught or coached kids at any age level, they'll probably have enough experience to assure you that's nonsense. Different people are motivated by different things and in different ways. To the larger point, however, teaching or raising a child is not about getting them to do something. It's about getting them to understand something. Your number one point is about how you can more effectively manipulate a child than it is about raising them to have the appropriate tools to navigate life intelligently. Also, punishment, which is what you're dealing with, not negative reinforcement. Punishment, especially in the child's eye, teaches a consequence. It teaches children, for example, not to steal candy because that will get them slapped or spanked, rather than giving them a meaningful understanding for why stealing is wrong and too much candy is bad for them. You've now taught them it's best to not get caught or not to upset or disobey a more powerful authority figure because physical punishment for doing those things is the true consequence. You might also be teaching them that those who are larger and stronger make the rules. There are a lot of things that you are teaching them. You're always teaching children something, but when you bring physical punishment into it, you might be teaching things differently than what you thought. And if you think that physical punishment or threats are always or even regularly going to be instantly and completely associated in a child's mind with exclusively that negative behavior that you as the adult desire and expect it to be, then I have to wonder if you've even spent a day around a young child to observe how different a developing mind is from an adult's. Number two, boundaries and consequences. There has to be a line drawn. There has to be a consequence to acceptable behavior. As you've stated in other videos, children don't think like adults, especially at an early age. Children are egocentric and immediate. A quick swat on the ass gets their attention and provides an immediate negative outcome. And let's be honest, an occasional paddling now is far better than your child being stabbed in a processing for the county jail at the age of 15 plus. Any disciplining that does not incorporate a physical punishment as the ultimate reprimand lacks teeth and will be completely ignored by the child. I'm not advocating hitting children every time they breathe or sneeze. I'm not giving credibility to the stereotypical nun walking up and down the rows of desks and swatting knuckles with a ruler every 30 seconds. All I'm saying is that there are situations where corporal punishment is both acceptable and appropriate. Boundaries and consequences can absolutely be established without physical punishment. There are multiple layers of behavioral response that anyone who's taken a general or child psychology class should be familiar with. The basics are as follows. Positive reinforcement. That's providing something desired in response to positive behavior. Negative reinforcement, which is usually misunderstood for punishment, as you did earlier, that's actually removing something undesirable in response to positive behavior, which makes it enforcement. Extinction is removing something desired in response to negative behavior, and punishment is providing something undesired in response to negative behavior. This undesired thing you're adding could be physical, like a spanking, or it could be a chore or some other kind of additional thing that a child has to do in response to what happened. It does not have to be physical for it to be punishment or have the same beneficial effects psychologically as punishment has. Your conclusion ignorantly ignores 3/4 of those techniques, plus the entire realm of punishment that doesn't involve physicality. You also ignorantly suggest that not only is physical punishment the only way to establish boundaries and consequences, but that a lack of it is likely to make a child wind up in jail. You speak as if the proposal of raising a child without corporal punishment is untested ground, and that doing so will get a parent completely ignored and disrespected by his or her children. Nonviolent child raising works. There are people who have and continue to raise children in this way. There are entire cultures where this is the mainstream. Living proof exists, but it does require far more patience and less gratification on the parent's part than the satisfaction that the parent gets from that immediate pat on the butt. When a parent sees his or her little boy do something wrong, hits him, hears him cry, etc., even if the parent don't feel good about the child being in pain, he or she sees an instant response. A parent feels like he or she has done something to help the child because some form of observable impact for the negative action occurs right then and there. That immediate impact, which most people assume teaches a kid to immediately associate it with the negative behavior, doesn't reliably work that way. Whether the child knows better or not, or whether you think they know better or not, they may well associate the physical punishment with the parent themselves, or with getting caught, or with any number of other present factors that you've now taught them to be afraid of, rather than nonviolent extinction or punishment, which allow the child to think more carefully about the cause of the consequence in question, along, of course, with explanation. To the previous point, though, when people act as if raising a child without physically punishing them will result in them growing into criminal delinquents, it's on par with the ignorance of those who say that if we allow gay people to get married, then brimstone will rain from the skies, bestiality will become legal, and the surrounding society will sink into unspeakable depravity. It completely ignores all the societies where gay marriage is legal, and the population there is all the better because of it. If you assume that nonviolent child raising is an impossibility or will cause a child to be raised into some rebellious heathen, then perhaps you should seek out some people, authors, YouTubers, who have raised or have been raised in that way. You might learn something.